What's up, everybody?
Hello!
Welcome to this very fun episode of the Movie Boners podcast. Sounded borderline official. Let's move on from that.
Yep.
What beer are you drinking today?
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, it's not quite what I expected. Hey, that means I can use that as my, hey, my beer is not related in any way, fashion, or anything. But I don't know what I was expecting when I got this beer. I just like the brewery and just figured, well, let's see what this is like. And it's not too shabby. And that is how it matches the episode, because I had no idea what I was going to watch or what to expect, except like I like Terry Gilliam, and that was pretty much it. Yeah, it's not bad. It's called Black Thunder from Austin Beer Works here in Austin.
That makes sense.
It's just a black lager. It's not too bad. Not too bad. Yeah.
How
about you, bud?
Weirdly similar to you. And so, first of all, I tried really hard to find a beer imported from Brazil for my beer for this episode, because I thought that would be great. And I couldn't find one in like the whole town. So then I tried looking for a beer related to the theme of authoritarian governments with the power to have you killed and no real oversight or accountability if they make a mistake or anything like that.
I was going to say no accountability.
Which sounds like a very complicated theme, but I found a beer that matched that. So my beer is from the Cerebral Brewing Company in Denver and Aurora, Colorado. And it's called Shadow Council.
Oh my God.
And it's similar to your black lager in the sense that mine is actually a black IPA.
Oh, all right.
So that's kind of a funny crossover.
Nice. Look at us.
It's very good.
I'm so curious to get into this movie with you, but I know we got a few housekeeping things.
And I think the black beers work because it's kind of a black comedy.
Black comedy. Black is typically associated with being kind of bleak, and it's kind of a bleak world.
Very dark
story. It's
we nailed it.
Go us. Yeah.
So, before we get into much else, quickly check in on the movie draft. Even though nothing has happened yet.
Nothing's really... Man, look at those big numbers you and I are putting up, Jake. Oh, fuck, a name. God damn it.
Yeah, the other thing that hasn't happened, I imagine, is you choosing a name, because you said you were going to do that at some point. All right. Still a couple weeks away from our first movies coming out, Argyle being number one. So, but just so you know, we're set, we're prepped, we're ready to rock. And as soon as you figure out a name next time, we'll put it in there. So that is.
I'm making myself a big note to pick a team name.
Ooh, big note.
Yeah,
fantastic.
That way it's
screaming
and then as far
at me. Good idea. Oh, you wrote it on paper, like a old fashioned.
Like the old man I am. Yes.
That's amazing. You have pen and ink and everything.
I know. It's like
a quill, basically.
Oh, that's too much.
Yeah, quills would be too hipster, I think.
Yeah.
I guess other announcement-y things. There's a lot of stuff going on Instagram these days. So if you're not following us on Instagram and on YouTube, I'm trying to put everything that is interesting also on YouTube. Check us out there. You'll want to do that also pretty soon, because in the next month or two, we're going to start taking votes and notes on the first ever Movie Boners Awards. And so there will be a lot of fan input. It's a award show for the people is what we're going for. So, but the way we communicate basically is through Instagram. So if you're on there, very cool. If you're a new listener, we've had quite a bit of new followers based on some of the stuff from the end of last year. The top 10 when we were young, things kind of blew up on us, and that was very cool. So we really appreciate it if you're here for the first time. feel free to connect. We're super open, super low key, and love hearing from you about all kinds of stuff, whether it's a movie you're watching or a episode topic, or you listen to this crazy episode from 2 years ago that we did and you have thoughts. You can still share them. We don't mind going back. Have you seen anything new lately, though?
I did. I got a few things watched. I finally watched Good Burger 2 because I was so upset that you watched it before me. I had to if I don't get this watched before we do this episode, I'm not a true fan. Jake?
That's true.
You were not kidding. That movie is delightful. I loved it from the get-go with the talking burgers and shakes. I was like, yep, I am completely sold into this movie. It was so refreshing to watch something that didn't take itself serious, had no agenda except just to be fun and silly. That was fantastic. Yeah, that was a good time.
Good.
And then I had to watch a couple Christmas movies. So because at the time of recording, it's the season. So I've watched Candy Cane Lane on Prime. I think it's on Prime. It's the new Eddie Murphy movie, Christmas movie.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And that had some silly, fun moments. It's a Christmas movie, so it's really not good, but at the same time, you're but it's warm and fuzzy and there's a Christmas lesson. Okay. It had some good moments.
Isn't it a family movie too?
Yeah. Very family movie. Yeah. Okay. And then I was like, well, Netflix had a shockingly entertaining, terrible, awesome Christmas movie last year with Lindsay Lohan. So maybe they'll have another kind of similar thing. Let's check this out. So I watched Best Christmas Ever. And that was terrible.
Not the best Christmas
that
ever.
That one was bad. I was really, really disappointed with that one.
Was it fun bad like Lindsay Lohan's movie?
No, it was just...
Oh, no.
It just wasn't good. Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy that one. But then... Prime also has this little Christmas special movie, animated movie called Merry Little Christmas Batman, I think is what the full title is. A Very Merry Christmas Batman. It's one of those. And it's full-fledged, family-friendly version of Batman and Damian. If Damian is 8 years old and aspiring to be the next Batman, that movie was freaking hilarious.
If he's not totally fucked up.
Right. It's the happy version of Batman. Yeah. Full of awesome references to every live action Batman. It was, oh my God. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I was like, this is so cute. This movie rocks. And that was all I watched, I think. Nope, I'm forgetting something else. Nope. Brazil was the other thing, but we're gonna get into that.
We're gonna talk all about Brazil.
So it was a very holly jolly little watch fest for me, for the most part.
Nice, that's awesome. Yeah, it's that time of year for it. My only thing, I guess I watched a Christmas movie also. So I've watched The Grinch, but the 2018 Illumination animated one. Had never seen it. Had no real desire to see it, but
it's cute.
It is cute. My 1-year-old son it's one of the two movies that he is obsessed with. That and Toy Story 2. And so I've watched it a lot and mostly in bits and pieces, but finally I think have seen the whole thing. The animation's really good. It's a lot lighter and funner and less scary. The Grinch is less grumpy, less nefarious.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit more fun than the other versions, which is good if you have young kids. But it weirdly ties into this episode because there's a small 10-second cutaway scene where he is emotionally eating. And during that scene, they play the song Brazil like over it. And I was like, oh my God, like I hear this song everywhere I go now.
That's kind of
That can't be
freaky.
good. Yeah. It was a very funny and hilarious moment when I realized what was happening.
All right. All right.
But yeah, it was good. I would recommend it if you like animated Christmas things. It's a solid one.
It's a cute little film. We watch it pretty regularly around this time of year. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Nice. I couldn't believe it was from 2018. I felt like it was like from a year or two ago. And I was like, oh shit.
Time is a construct. We've completely lost all grasp on it. So
that's very true. Very, very true. All right. Let's see. Other housekeeping things. You should subscribe on YouTube. That helps us out a lot. It lets us do cool things. We need to build up our numbers. We're trying to grow the channel and make an effort to do that. So if you could do that, that would be awesome. We really appreciate you listening. It's a very fun time. We hope it's fun for you as well. So tell anybody that you also think would like to have fun. We want to meet them, and you can join us on Instagram. That's where we post most things. Try to tease upcoming episodes there as well. So if you need to watch a movie that you've never seen before in order to keep up, you don't suddenly get a notification that, hey, we're watching this weird movie from 1985 that you've never heard of. And that way you can actually have seen it and enjoy the episode and all that good stuff. So yeah, Instagram's good. YouTube's good. But everywhere else you can find us, that's good too. And I think that's it.
Make sure you're subscribed so that you can get entered into the contest that we got going on right now.
Well, the contest is over by this
point.
The episode is coming out. So
okay, never mind, people. Never mind. I'm trying to fuck with
that out of the episode.
I'm trying to fuck with you.
It worked. Let's get into the episode. Let's do this. A new year. And that means another opportunity for me to make Dustin watch an obscure and bizarre science fiction movie that he's never seen before.
It's true. And you had never seen this either.
Also true.
Yeah. I don't even know where to start with this little discussion of ours. Obviously, heavy spoilers coming up. Scratch that. Not the spoiler part.
Yeah.
We're spoiling the hell out of it. But
well, we should say whether we like unspoilery kind of what we thought in case anybody's like, should I bother or not? So we can give a little background and generally did you like it or not?
That's a good lead in, Jake, because I inadvertently realized you watched it before I did.
Mm-hmm.
So we constant messages and like responses to shit, right? And so I saw one about Brazil, about someone talking about like, this is a great film. And I was like, oh, like it's Brazil, right? So I clicked the message and I saw your response to it, which was, I can't believe more people don't talk about this movie or something like that, or people don't talk about this movie more often. And I was like, oh shit, Jake watched it. Because as I started like scrolling, I realized you guys were talking like kind of about the ending. And I was like, oh, good God. Like,
yeah, I didn't even think that I might spoil it for you because I should have, though. We do share an account.
But it's okay. It's okay. It was not spoiled for me.
It was funny how I got in that conversation because somebody had posted like a Christmas adjacent movie list thing, and they posted about Brazil. And so I was like, A, we're watching Brazil like this week, and B, I didn't know it was Christmas related at all. Kind of like how a couple of months ago, I didn't even know it was a science fiction movie. I thought like I had heard of Brazil, but I thought it was like that Mel Gibson movie, the Year of Living Dangerously. Like I thought it was kind of like that style. And then someone was like, it's a sci-fi movie. I was like, what? And then I like saw a couple of images from it. I'm like, this is weird and not what I thought it was at all. And then for someone else to say, yeah, it's also a Christmas movie. I was like, you're joking me. Like that can't be for real.
It takes place during Christmas time.
Yeah.
I would say it's Christmas adjacent. I would say it's like Lethal Weapon, right? Like You don't consider Lethal Weapon to be an actual Christmas movie, but it's Christmas adjacent because it's during the holiday. To all you people being like, oh, that's Die Hard 2. Shut up. It's a Christmas movie. Don't argue with us.
Yeah. We'll have to have that conversation another time.
We stand firm on Die Hard being Christmassy. So I saw your message and I was like, he's surprised more people don't talk about this movie. And I was like, that means he was extremely intrigued and or triggered by this movie. Like, this movie must have like really tapped into Jake's head. And then I'm looking at our like kind of category list that you started up so that I could see, let's see what we got starting so we can start prepping and getting ready for that.
Yeah, future episode.
And I won't say what category it was in, but all of a sudden Brazil was sitting there and I was like, oh, this movie really got to Jake. This movie really got to him. I was like, all right, let's see what this bad boy is. Being a Terry Gilliam fan, like I really enjoyed Time Bandits. I really enjoyed 12 Monkeys. Obviously all the Monty Python stuff from back in the day. It's fun. It's weird as hell.
That's mostly all I know him.
Yeah. Yeah. I love Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I love Dr. Parnassus. So I was like, I kind of had an idea of what I was going to see just visually because he has such a weird view of the world because he never claims that it's like actually futuristic. It's like, no, this is just like an alternate version, but his view of the world is always so weird.
That's my favorite kind of science fiction, honestly, where it's like you can't really tell it's kind of futuristic, but also kind of not. So you don't really know what time period it is. It's not dateable. He does date it. He says it's like sometime in the 20th century, but
that's not even really like
there's like computers that are certainly more advanced than 1985's computers, but they have like little magnifying screens, and then everybody dresses like it's the 40s though. They're wearing like suits and hats and coats and stuff. So it is I like the style.
Yeah. Yeah. I knew kind of what the visuals were going to be, but I went into this movie not knowing what it was about, not knowing who was in it, knowing zero. And the first, like, the opening scene about HVAC ducts and like, let Central Services come and give you our new ducts for your household. And they come in a variety of colors. I was like, what the hell? And then,
boom. Is this a goddamn movie about ducts?
I was like, what the fuck is this? And then giant explosion. Jake, I spent
You're talking about the Children of Men scene.
Yeah. Dude, I spent like the first half hour of this movie just being like, what the fuck am I watching? Like, what the fuck is this movie? Like, every minute and a half, something new and weird, or not weird like you would think or assume. It's just so random at first.
Yeah.
And unexpected.
Yeah. It's not like over the top bizarre, but there is weird, different things that happen for sure. A lot of them.
Yeah. So first half hour, I was very lost. And I was even like, I kind of had an idea of just visually, but this is something so different. Like, I feel like I was watching 12 Monkeys on crack. That's the world it like really reminded me of. And the first time I watched, when it ended that first viewing, I'm pretty sure I just kind of sat there and was like, I don't even know how to start taking notes on this movie. Like, what the fuck was this movie? And then I watched it again and I get it. I was like, okay, Brazil's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you get it and you like it? Or do you just like get it like, okay, I at least know what's going on?
No, like, and when I say I get it, I don't mean like it's a hard movie to understand. It's actually a really easy movie to understand. There's nothing
Yeah, it's pretty clear
too
themes and
complicated.
things.
When I say I got it, it was more of just like I understood Gilliam's vision and the world that he created, and he just kind of like the weird stopped being weird. It just made sense.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I mean. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I really like this movie. What about
Good.
you?
I'm glad you said that. I was like, it could go either way, honestly, because I think you'll like it. I think that you'll get it. I think you'll get the themes and the
Oh
importance
yeah.
and the message and all that stuff. And the weird things are entertaining and the performances are entertaining. Yeah, I watched it for the first time, never seen it before. And after the first time, no, in the middle of it, at about maybe a third of the way through it, 2/3 of the way through it, somewhere in that range, I was like, I fucking love this movie. This is like my ideal kind of movie. Not only is it weirdly science fiction, not only is it dystopian and anti-authority, but I also didn't really know who was in it either. And when Robert De Niro shows up and his whole character, I was like, he's my fucking hero. He's like a libertarian Superman. He's just an HVAC technician with a gun who's a mercenary operating on AC outside the law. He's like the coolest dude ever. And yeah, and the whole concept of it being kind of a dystopian society and it's kind of 1984-esque. Everybody compares it to that, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very, very well done and very brilliantly formulated. I think there's a lot of levels to it, so I'm excited to get into it for this episode. But I highly recommend it if you like any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there was a lot in it both times that I watched it that I just kind of like this world that he's showing us.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel futuristic. I like never did it feel futuristic to me, which I like. I like undated sci-fi, which we've talked about in the past. But it didn't feel futuristic. To me it felt very like, oh, society got so kind of caught up and lost and being distracted with just some mundane random shit that they've just let the world kind of like de-evolve into this bleak world where anything you do is considered a crime against the central services agency or the oh crap, what were they called? The mission of information. Yeah. Ministry of Information. Yeah. So like anything you do that's outside of what they claim as a regulation is like a federal crime, and they're allowed to bust into your home any way they see fit, which is like the most ridiculous way to burst into a home, but that fits the style. Yeah, there was so much I was like, this movie is just such a trip. And when De Niro showed up, instantly I was like, fucking De Niro's in this too? Like, what is this movie?
Yeah, you expect a lot of the like British actors and stuff to appear in a Terry Gilliam joint, but I did not expect Robert De Niro.
I didn't expect De Niro. I thought his character was a lot of fun. I actually thought the majority of the characters were a lot of fun in their own stupid way, because a lot of the characters are actually kind of stupid. All the like authoritative figures in it.
Oh yeah,
I think the boss at the beginning, Ian Holm, his character, I loved his character because that first image of him of being like he's lording over the workers who are like constant movement, and then he goes in and when he tries to speak for the first time, he's got like that Mr. like and then you find out he's like just a sap. He's a like spineless little crybaby, essentially.
He just holds that position by not really ever doing anything. And
Right.
when any sort of responsibility comes his way, he doesn't know what to do
He
with
doesn't know what to do, and he makes sure he's able to pass the buck on to someone else.
Yeah.
I was laughing. Just most of the characters, I thought, like, yeah, these guys are all funny in such a stupid way.
Mm-hmm.
They are entertaining. I think the part that confused me the most, because there is zero setup, there is nothing to prepare you at all,
Mm-hmm.
is for Sam's dreams, where he's
Yeah.
this warrior angel flying through the clouds. That scene came up, and I was like, "What?
Yeah.
What?"
That is the one thing that the first time I watched it, I was like, I don't love this. Like, there's a lot of this movie that feels kind of like it shares themes with like Blade Runner and other things, and The Dreams was one of them, but it's like much more specific. And I was like, I don't know that I love this. But then after watching it more and more, I was like, no, I get the point, and I kind of like how it informs Sam's path and his motivation and all of that stuff throughout, that he actually kind of dreams to be a hero and wants more, and inside of this authoritarian society, those are the kinds of people that really can't they don't fit in. You fit in if you follow the rules and accept whatever's going on, but dreamers especially are the kinds of people that they want more. And I'm not really a dreamer, but I'm the other problem child, which is like, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me kind of guy. I'm the kind of guy that semi-regularly cyberbullies politicians online. So this movie did kind of appeal to me in that way, but not in the same way that I think Sam was. He's much more of a dreamer and wants that romance, wants that adventure, and to be a hero. And
yeah,
that helps.
I totally understand Sam. His whole, like, he doesn't necessarily want to be a part of the path that's kind of like handed to him and kind of laid out for him. He's never actually been given like a chance to aspire to do anything he like feels driven to do or wants to do. So I totally, like, after I kind of realized, oh, it's a dream. And then it's like, oh, they're trying to tell you Sam needs something else in life. He's dreaming for something more. Totally understand Sam. And then you find out the connections that are used for him that he resents and kind of hates. And I feel bad for Sam. He's like, Sam is that character who kind of, I feel like he kind of represents everyone that does like the full-time job where you have to bust your ass just to, break even or whatever. But the better you're at your job, the more people are just going to pawn shit off onto you. And I was like, this feels, this feels right. I think at some point everyone's kind of felt that. You know what else was really weird to watch a movie have themes of, Jake?
What?
Terrorism is normal and people don't really freak out about it anymore.
Yeah. And you said a little bit ago that this movie is not kind of futuristic. One of the things that I appreciated about it is that it's very much based on the present also. Like it's not really futuristic in the way that it's really more hyperbolic. I think that it takes all of the ideas that we have now, real problems that we have now, and just blows them up into larger proportions, whether it's authoritarianism or terrorism or whatever. Yeah, the fact that these bombings are occurring and nobody cares, like to the point that a restaurant can be bombed and everybody's just like trying to finish their meal. Like they're less bothered by the bombing in the restaurant than you would be if a waitress dropped a tray now.
Right.
Like everybody at least looks, but Now nobody even looks when there's a bomb that goes off. They just like put up a divider and let everybody go on with their meal.
They raise their voices to hear each other talk about gossip or menu items, so they don't have to listen to the screaming agony of people who are in the blast radius.
Fashion and a bunch of other bullshit.
Right. Plastic surgery. Yeah, I was. So after I finished it the first time, again, not knowing anything about it going into it, I was very much kind of like, this felt, and not to sound like a broken record, but it felt very 1984. It really did. And that kind of took me off guard because that book, I feel, is very important. And it's kind of a frightening book. If you haven't read it, kids, the government doesn't necessarily want you to read it. So go read it.
It's a very formative book that a lot of different things get compared to, but it's not uniquely imaginative. Like it came up with this fantasy that is specific to it. It took what is happening in the real world, just like this movie could easily have taken what's happening in the real world if 1984 didn't ever exist, and come up with the exact same thing.
Right.
Like it's all based on human beings and culture and our weaknesses and governments and their problems and all of this stuff. It's brilliant. But 1984 is, and everybody's going to compare it to it because it is kind of the standard for that perfect version of that story. And this, I think, does a lot of
this does a lot
as well
of like very similar themes. Obviously it's not exactly 84. So it felt 84 to me. And like I said, it also felt very 12 Monkeys, which also every time I watch that movie feels very relevant. Really, anytime I watch 12 Monkeys, it feels like, this is very, like, we should be really focusing. Come on, people. And so when I watched this and I started like looking stuff up, I was very drawn to the 84 comparisons. And I had to laugh because Terry Gilliam never read the book, but he claimed this is his version of 1984. So I thought, well, that's kind of funny.
Just heard about it. And
he knew what it kind of pertained to. So he thought, well, I'll make my own version of that kind of dystopian world based on what you said, Jake, like the current climate of stuff of just human behavior and how quickly we let stuff go. I probably laughed the hardest, not at something that's actually funny in the movie, but just a reoccurring theme in it because, well, screens are everywhere in Brazil. Everywhere. Everyone is staring at the screen. Everyone is constantly, I think it's funny that like the actual screen is very small and everyone uses these giant magnifying glasses so they can see it better. That made me laugh. Your house, you turn your smart home on.
Right.
And out of the wall, your TV screen like literally turns so that it's in perfect view of wherever you're at in your place. I laughed very hard at that because I was just like, this right here is probably the most so far, and that's pretty early in the movie, but that felt the most like, yep, he hit the nail on the head with this one. This was not even a reach. Holy shit.
The screens was a big one. The other one, when it took me a while to realize it, but I think around midway through my second watch, I was like, oh my God, that's us now, was the emphasis on information.
Yeah.
Like, not only is the work at the Ministry of Information and the whole government seems to be based around this collecting and sorting and keeping information on everybody at all times. But specifically the pipes, the ducts the conduits of mostly papers that fly around the city, and they send paper to each other and documents through these pipes to everybody all the time. It makes a very visual kind of futuristic gothic kind of look in the film, but it's very functional for them that they're just sending this information all over all the time. And once I realized that, I was like, that's us. We have those ducts, we have them underground and underwater, and they're fiber optic, but we're sending information all over the world all the time.
And it's a giant clutter. It's in the way. It's always like actually inconvenient, despite us saying that it's like, oh no, this is normal. This is every day. It's so convoluted. Yeah. When I realized,
first scene, they're trying to like sell things to cover it up and make it a little bit more look nice, kind of thing.
Yeah. When I caught on to that too, because I thought, like, what a weird, of all the objects out there, HVAC ducts is perhaps the oddest choice in like to an object to focus on, especially so early. And then the visuals throughout the film, everyone's home, every building except the government's building is like just jam packed with this shit that's so ugly. And when you realize like, oh, it's just full of the constant information being passed along, like, yeah, this is not pretty. Ours is just like, we don't see it, so it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. But yeah, Jake, you're right. It's there.
And it's such a bizarre, like, you think that, and you're like, oh, that's pretty clever. But then you think, this movie came out in 1985, like before the internet was ever invented. And it's basically exactly the internet. Like, I don't understand how he came up with that. That's incredible.
Even down to something gets... there's a mistake in the information that leads to just a huge like
main
chain of fuck ups and the plot. So I guess we should actually probably say what the movie is about, like actually about, because there's so many things to just like, you have to comment on so much on this movie. That was a big thing to me, of just like, I don't know how I can keep up with note taking. And I was like, where do I start with note taking? And then I was like, fuck it. It's a Terry Gilliam film. I think you just start like, you're doing multiple viewings. So we're just going to everything.
Basically none of that has to do with the story that we talked about. That's like, that's the themes and the motifs and the interesting parallels to reality. But
I mean, it's still like simpler. They all kind of, those themes and everything still definitely intersect directly into Sam's and Jill's and the Buttles and the Tuttle lives. So Jake, what?
Okay. I will attempt to explain what Brazil is about. It's basically about the crossing of paths between three men is the best way that I could describe it. Primarily the hero, Sam Lowry, he's played by Jonathan Pryce, and he works for the government, basically collecting information, kind of like staying lower level, doesn't want to get promoted, even though his mom is super in the elites and really wants him to get promoted and can pull the strings and make him get promoted whenever he wants. It's also about Harry, or Archibald Tuttle, who is the incredible Robert De Niro. You don't really know anything about him for a long time. You just know in the beginning that the government is like basically issuing a warrant for his arrest, and there's some random occurrence, an accident that changes the paperwork from Archibald Tuttle to Archibald Buttle. And Archibald Buttle is a poor innocent family man with small children who has his home invaded by the cops and gets arrested, and there's just this terrible government fuck up that nobody is accountable for, nobody takes the blame for, and he ends up dying, and then that kind of doesn't really have any significant consequences other than Jill Layton, who is the woman that Sam Lowry sees in his dreams. She's the kind of the main love interest. She happens to also live above the Buttles and is a nice person. It seems like she cares about him and kind of goes to the government and says there was a wrongful arrest, and she seems like a nice lady. And so that's kind of the main plot, is that those three people interact. It mainly follows Sam Lowry and his journey through trying to navigate this bureaucracy, discovering this mistake, trying to resolve it, trying to help the widow, and also trying to ultimately achieve his dream, because he does kind of find Jill and starts to figure out, like, is she real? Can he actually have a relationship with her? All that stuff. So I think that's the best explanation I can get in the simplest way possible.
Yeah, when I looked it up, when it ended, I was like, okay, how did like IMDb summarize Brazil? How did they bring it up? And it was like a bureaucrat for the government becomes an enemy of the state while trying to like chase the love of his life. So I read that and was like, well, that kind of sounds like the movie The Adjustment Bureau, which is a cool movie, cool idea. But that focuses like on the actual romance. Brazil, I feel, is like, yeah, it's, I mean, Sam's the focal point of the story. I think it's Sam is just trying to learn to adapt to his life falling apart after, just due to bad circumstances. And I think you summed it up better. It's a tough one to try and like explain what this movie is about, because to me, it really does come down to all those different themes and how they all, like, how Sam navigates through all of it and how you're shown all of it sequence by sequence. And I think the biggest thing I took from this one, dude, was just like the absolute lack of accountability that that government in the movie has, and to the point where like they purposely make red tape or make a process more difficult and redundant than it ever needs to be, and it's all for the sake of, well, you can't blame me,
right?
Don't point the finger at us. You're the one that's at fault. We're never at fault. And that's a tough pill for me to swallow, because I'm like, well, that feels real. That feels like, yep, that's right.
Yeah. Everybody has their own specific departments, and everybody kind of blames each other. Whether it's the guys filling the hole that the cops blew in your wall, and they're like, well, it's very simple. We'll just patch it up. It's no big deal. And then their patch piece falls through, and they're like, oh,
straight through.
The guys in the mechanics, they switched to metric and didn't tell us again. Like, everybody is blaming somebody else, and even if something goes wrong, they have the paperwork that approved it, and they're like, well, the fact that this person got arrested, he was the right person because the paperwork said that he was supposed to get arrested, and it's not our fault. It's that he had a heart condition. The paperwork didn't tell us that he had a heart condition because it's the wrong guy. There's no way that you would know that. And it's just a whole mishmash of ineffectiveness. And they definitely overcomplicate everything. Tons of waste, tons of manpower, tons of everybody doing something, but it's all mostly to cover their own ass.
Right. There's no actual progress or betterment for the people or the country coming from central services, and
which is the worst possible thing when you're a bureaucracy who has the power to completely take somebody's life away.
Yeah.
Whether it's arresting them or actually outright killing them, they have that power, and there's nothing anybody can do to stop it. Like the scene when he gets arrested was terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
It was so frightening how fast and just how like crazy it just keeps building. And like when they bring down the giant chain. So first off, having guys drill a hole through your ceiling and then come crashing through your door, your wall, your window, the ceiling that they just drilled a hole through. There's no handcuffs. It's like a burlap sack. It's like
a straight jacket, but with a full body.
Yeah, it's a full body straight jacket. And then the one that got me was the clamp around the neck that showed up, and I was just like, oh, this is fucked. Like, what?
Yeah.
What the fuck? And they force the wife to sign. There's no answers. There's no, like, we're not going to question, like, you just have to accept what we're doing. Sign here, sign here. Here's your receipt.
Like, you're arrested for this and this and this, and for this number and this code and this violation. Right. Sign this, and here's your receipt. And sign this other thing. Yeah. And her panic, her absolute, as she should be, and her children are there, they're young, they're freaking out. And for her to be like, okay, now I have to sign this paperwork and basically sign my husband's life away because I don't know when I'll see him again. Terrifying,
absolutely terrifying. No position of power should give you that, should be that at that level. You just shouldn't, it should not be there. Like, fuck you.
Yeah. And, no, I completely agree. But some people will watch that, I think, and be like, oh, that's, that doesn't really happen. Maybe in the past, maybe in, Nazi Germany or, communist Russia or whatever, but it doesn't really happen. Fucking 2 years ago, I watched video after video after video of America, Australia, England, all of these supposed civilized Western countries that the police would enforce curfew, enforce all these other things. And you can just see the helplessness, that there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
Even if you fight back, then you're resisting arrest, you're going to be killed. Like, there's nothing you can do. You're just helpless. And it's just it's terrifying.
It's terrifying. It's sad. It's terrifying.
It's much better. Like, there needs to be a balance in the sense that these people running things and enforcing things are human beings, and you're going to make mistakes, and nobody's perfect, and we should understand that by now, I would think. And so whether it's a piece of paper that has the wrong name on it or somebody makes their own mistake, that should be kind of baked in. I think that, you may make a mistake. If I'm wrong and you break into my house or show up with a warrant or whatever, you should feel empowered to actually, if you're in the right, be able to do something about that. And other people should understand, hey, maybe that's a possibility. Not that, well, we're definitely right. If you resist, that means you're guilty and all of this
right.
Stuff. Like, it gets out of control.
Very fast. Escalation is frightening. And the whole, like, portrayal of this government system in Brazil, the escalation of how it all is, and then all the, like, different loopholes that they create, like, to the point of, well, do you have the receipt? Is it stamped? Oh, no, it's not stamped. You have to go back to the other department that told you to come to us, even though we told you to go to them first. You got to go back to them and get it stamped. It was very much like, what the fuck? Like, anything just to be able to be like, my hands aren't dirty of that. And even
it's a complete abuse of priorities. Like, is it more important that this T is crossed and I is dotted, or is it more important that there's an innocent man who's arrested and has his life ruined and is in danger of being never seen again, and his children miss him and his wife needs him and all these other things? Is that human life more important than your ink on your paper?
Right. There was a lot to this movie that was terrifying to me. A lot of the dialogue, you brought some of it up, because when you first meet Sam, like when he comes into the office and he's trying to, like, explain, oh, wrong guy, but we did the right thing because his name was on the paper, so it's not our fault. But yeah, it's the wrong guy. That's why you can't process him in the system. Yada, yada, yada. even that scene, I was like, oh, you're one of these schmucks. Like, I don't think I like you very much right now. But of course, Sam's a hero, so you're going to see him kind of be forced to change his mind on things and be forced to just rapidly be like, okay, fuck that life and fuck what they're doing. We're going to do our own thing, Jill. We're doing our own thing.
I think a lot of his life, he was kind of just a product of his environment and just kind of doing the grind, going the flow, kind of like what you were saying about his 9 to 5 check in, check out kind of thing.
Yeah.
Didn't really ask questions or really notice what's going on.
I thought it was funny when you meet his mom. Because, like, by the time... so, before we get to the mom, I guess, Sam's house... I brought it up earlier with the screen where, like, he wakes up and, like, the TV screen comes out of the corner and, like, actually curves to face him. But I had to laugh at, as he powers everything up, it's like the sad version of Doc Brown's breakfast making invention at the beginning of Back to the Future. It's like the really sad version of that. Everything sounds just like run down, kind of like it doesn't sound like it's operating like it's supposed to. And of course, as you're watching it, it doesn't operate like it's supposed to. The coffee spout kind of like fucks up, and instead of pouring the coffee into the cup, it pours it all over the toast. Which
that's why he's late to work. His alarm clock didn't go
right because the electricity was all fucked up. The phone was weird to me. How it's like old school style, like switchboard, but it's a landline.
He has to like plug it in to like make a call or get a call, and he's doing it like as he's waking up. I was like, how do you even get the plug in the right hole? There's a bunch of different ones. It's like a full switchboard.
It's like, man, my alarm goes off on my phone in the morning, and it's a smartphone, so it's touchscreen. I have a hard time just swiping the screen correctly just to get the fucking thing to shut up. This guy's like in the dark, still half asleep, and like switchboards it perfectly into the right port and is able to take a call. I wouldn't be able to do that at all. The toast, I can't, like, him and his toast cracks me up because it's such a waste. And it's a lot of energy for something that has such a simple solution. And I guess that's kind of like the point or one of the points in it. His toast just keeps folding and he keeps trying to like bite it. At one point he has it folded over and all he has to do is just eat the toast and he's fine. And that's when he throws it away. Both times I watched it, I was like, what the fuck? Just eat the toast. Like, it solved itself. It took care of itself. And you're like, nope, can't do it.
Yep. Waste is a better solution.
This inconvenience is too much for me. So I'm done. Fuck it. But yeah, so going back to what I don't know how I got there, but his mom. The first scene with his mom was actually a still that I remember seeing, which is her like cheeks being like pulled off of her face. I had never understood the context of that. So I was excited when I realized like, oh, this is the movie with that still with the face being pulled off. And I was like, oh, it makes sense now. And then I remembered like, oh, wait a minute. I think Brazil is also the one that has the other movie still of that close up with the real freaky looking baby mask and like that giant freaking whatever corridor, but you never know what it is. So I was like, I'm pretty sure this is the movie. I'm excited to see the context. Woohoo. We'll get to that later. Dude, the plastic surgery. Like when the doctor is like the fucking like binder clips that he's using on her cheeks. First off, ow. Thank God for prosthetics. Because I don't think anyone would be able to handle that. They're even did you notice they were even like those old school, like actual 80s style, like the metal clips?
Yeah.
was like, man, I remember the edges on those when you'd play with it in school, and that shit
Uh-huh.
hurt. That did not
Yeah,
taste
they're brutal. Yeah.
Imagine it
Yeah,
on your
it's
cheeks.
I haven't seen a more effective plastic surgery scene since Escape from LA. It's just
Oh,
grotesque
yeah.
and terrifying, and
And I had to laugh as he's like marking her face up and telling her like, here's what I'm gonna do to like change your appearance, and she's all proud of it and happy. I was laughing at that whole
Mhm.
thing though, because it was like, this is so gross, and this is so like, this was before plastic surgery
And
was so normalized.
that's true. That's true.
So
Yeah, it was a lot earlier on.
the body modification. I don't like saying modification because I feel that's not modifying, but you know what I mean. Um,
It's mortifying.
it, especially for her friend. Good God.
Yeah. 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 My complication had a complication.
It just gets so
Yeah, and I
much.
didn't believe that it would be effective. You are surprised later on when his mom actually does look significantly younger, and
Yeah.
you're kind of like, I guess that's the problem. And you're like, yeah, of course it works. You should go through it absolutely because it's definitely going to be effective. Uh, no amount of plastic surgery effectiveness though is going to make it okay for her to be talking about lingerie at her age, because she's all like, yeah, like I do not need the visual of that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, him getting mad at his mom for the promotion that she like pulled strings for. Because they hint about how powerful his mom is, when he's talking to his boss. But I also had to laugh because she's not only like this super rich lady who's like extravagant or whatever, but I really took it that like she's kind of a socialite. Like she's kind of that's where her fame and fortune has really come from. She's a fucking influencer. And
Yeah.
that made me just like, good fuck, are you kidding? Yet another thing of like, this is way too
Predictive of our current environment.
and I was like, did he pull 12 Monkeys wasn't out yet. That was the 90s, so he didn't know time travel stuff yet, but maybe he did.
Maybe.
Terry, I need some answers, sir. I need to know.
Yeah, the scene where they're in the restaurant with his mom and her friends, and kind of ties into what you were saying about the toast as well. The toast may not be real, and that's why it's so floppy and weird. Because the restaurant scene, when going back to again the very strict bureaucracy, because the waiter needs him specifically to order using the number of like a combo meal. Basically, he's like, I'll just take the steak. He's like, yeah, but what number is that, sir? I need you to say the number out loud. And when they get the food, it's just gook that has a little photograph of an actual meal. And so as you're eating this clumps of paste,
Yeah, they look like two little like patties almost, that or like two scoops that kind of flattened when they got put on the plate, and yet the photo on it cracked me up.
Yeah, it's like, this is what a steak should look like, but this is the glop that you're going to eat instead. And just imagine it as you're feeling this in your mouth. I was like, that's terrible, but also kind of the world we're headed towards, as more and more people are trying to just modify food and simplify food.
It's
and
all chemical at some point and has completely lost,
and outlaw actual meat and beef, and because they produce all of these methanes and stuff. So instead we'll feed you crickets and soy and all of this other junk that we add chemicals to create some sort of paste that kind of is similar to the thing that you recognized in the past. Yeah, very accurate and very terrifying.
Very accurate and very terrifying. Yeah. And then what the waiter cracks me up in that because of how like invasive he is to everyone's space, but the mom, her friend's daughter, none of them care how invasive he is. Sam does, which I'm like, yeah, get the fuck out of my face. I like that Sam is already this whole time just trying to be heard, to be like, mother, I don't want your hand out. Like, stop doing this. I don't want like you or that lifestyle. No one's listening to him. No one cares. It's all about like, oh, I got you a Christmas gift, which is the same fucking gift that everyone seems to give in this dystopian world. Which I was like, yeah, fuck that.
The Christmas gift. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no amount of imagination or individuality.
Creativity,
it's all
individual. Yeah. It's all been stripped away. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just when you're like, this scene is bonkers. Yeah. Just say the number. I want that one. Fine. You want number 3. Number 3. As I'm chuckling at all this interaction in the restaurant, though, they have to remind you, like, don't forget, terrorism is normal in this world. And the restaurant blows up.
Yeah.
And yeah, they bring over like one of those old Victorian like room dividers and just kind of like
you're like women change behind them in old movies. Change clothes, yeah. And they just block it off so you don't have to see the horrifying mangled people over there.
And they raise their voices to talk over the agony and the fires still burning. I was just, that restaurant scene, dude, is a trip because it feels like,
yeah.
I hope that's not.
Yeah, as they're eating their disgusting paste, as they're dressed in the most bizarre fashion, like
the shoe on the head.
She's got a hat that's literally a shoe, and it's just quote unquote fashionable, which you completely buy as something that would happen.
Yeah,
yeah. They look ridiculous, but they have no self-awareness that they're that ridiculous, I guess.
No self-awareness and absolute zero integrity or compassion for anybody else around them, and who's very very telling. Very Brazil is a scary fucking movie, Jake. It's a very scary movie.
It is.
Made me laugh for a lot of it.
Yeah. I think that's the effectiveness of Brazil, is that it is a Terry Gilliam, it is Monty Python, it is a comedy in some fashion, but it's so cutting that it is a brilliant dark comedy about humanity, about authoritarianism, about all of this stuff, and it's not just like Nazis or all of the like big things that you think of. It's like every little thing that has ever happened, whether it's like in the UK, you have to have a license when you buy a TV. Like there's this level of bureaucracy in the real world that everybody just kind of becomes accustomed to and acceptable. It's acceptable to them. Like the government is certainly one problem, but the government only gets there because the culture is the problem as well.
Well, the culture allows it to happen because it's easier to just let it happen than to like kind of speak up against it. Yeah.
And I think it's represented really well in the movie with not just Sam's character and everybody who just kind of goes with the flow and follows the rules, and no matter how ridiculous they are, but you see it in like everything. You see it in how the kids are playing in the movie, where their play
is arresting someone.
Yeah, it's like the most extreme version of Cops and Robbers, where they are actually very accurately and specifically acting out what I'm sure they've seen 100 times, which is arresting someone, patting them down, and all of this stuff. when they're not playing with gasoline and matches, they're playing with like this very authoritarian arrest game. And it's just very telling that this is the society that they grow up in, they're familiar with, it's acceptable to them, and then they will be adults, they will go on to vote or whatever, and it's just a cycle that continues because it gets more and more down that path over time. It's inevitable.
Yeah, that's one of those generational curses, I guess you could say, that in Brazil is very like prominent of, this is the environment that the kids are around. They're definitely a product of the environment because there is no other way. Everyone's been conditioned to be certain ways. This was like the dark comedy, very strange version of like Equilibrium to me, just without really any of the action sequences. And instead, from a cop's point of view, it's from a bureaucrat's point of view. Poor Sam.
Yeah, it's really interesting that they don't really focus on any of the rebellion part of it.
No,
like there's the terrorism that's happening, and there are certainly people that are unsatisfied in society, but there's not a big emphasis on the actual resistance of it. It's really just, here's how it is, and here's the situation they're in. Here's Sam, who would like to find this girl and do this other stuff, but he's not like a big, I need to bring down the system kind of guy. It's not that kind of movie. It's really just I'm a guy in the system who would really like to just have a nice life.
Right. It's a guy who is deep in the system who just wants out. He just wants a different life, and he's kind of punished for it. He's kind of put through a little bit of the ringer, but not in the way that you would expect, because he's not really hunted for most of the movie. He just kind of keeps making decisions that just like keep adding up, which you don't realize. I did not realize that until the second time I watched it. Was like, oh my God, every decision he makes from the time he shows up to his office that first time, every decision Sam makes after that is held against him as breaking the law. And they list like when it's
they've
all
been keeping track of him.
And I was like, this is fucked up that every little thing he's done is being scrutinized to fit the narrative of the central services and the Ministry of Information's like agenda. And how dare you keep trying to pursue this like mistake? Like, you're not allowed to do that. Stop doing that. Stop getting yourself involved.
My favorite crime or charge that they assign him is wasting paper and time, like resources of the government. You wasted our time and resources, and now you're going to pay for it.
And I think one of his biggest ones is when the most frustrating part in the movie to me, not the movie, but just like the world that you are like really thrown into, is when you find out that Mr. Buttle has passed away, and the government's like, well, we'll make it up to the wife by here's a check, but she doesn't have a checking account, which I thought like, oh God, that means like she's going to be in trouble. And they even kind of hint to that of like, we can't, like, she's going to have to go to some other little place to cash this check. She can't do it. We can't do it here because this is going to become.
Yeah. And it's also like she's not part of the system.
Yeah.
And if you're not part of the system, then we're going to like life is harder for you and all this stuff. And so if because she doesn't have a checking account and she's not on the grid or whatever, she can't get the refund, which is the most depressing thing ever. Well, I love the scene when you find out that her husband died, because the boss is basically like, well, this department has him down as canceled, this department has him down as closed, this department has him down as like as lost, this department has it down as destroyed, and then Sam goes and like Googles it, and he's like, yeah, he's dead. And he's like, oh, that's not good. But then a check shows up on his desk, and it freaks the boss out because it is something he has to do, some sort of responsibility, and doesn't know how to do it. But mostly the fact that it is a refund for the fines that her husband was charged unjustly.
Yeah.
And so he was wrongfully arrested, charged all these fines. The fact that they have to refund it means to me that they must have just pulled it out of his account automatically. Like,
Right.
that she didn't pay them in order to get him out of jail or anything. Like, the government had the money already. They are now issuing a refund is like not really saying sorry, but kind of as a way of saying sorry. And so now she needs to go and pick it up, and it is this like just terrifying thing.
Well, and
that
the boss is like nervous to sign the check and to sign the paperwork for it because he doesn't know what the consequence. The boss knows there's going to be a consequence for signing this check because it's, they talk. Sam has that line of like, "Can I see that? We've never seen a refund check." Like, and that's the telling of, so the system believes it's never made a mistake before, so it's this perfect system. So the rarity of it means there's consequences to it. And I think it's funny that the boss is like, "Oh, I don't know. And Sam's like, "I'll just do it for you. I'll drop the check off. I'll do this for you." And he like forges the signature and then moves on to go and drop the check off. The first time I watched it, when he signed the check, my immediate thought was like, well, that's probably gonna bite you in the ass. Like,
yeah, I was like, I don't think you should be forging your boss's signature,
right? Like,
or
this
whatever
feels
it is you're doing right
not
now.
right. And then, he goes to her house. I think this scene is potentially the second most impactful scene, like emotionally impactful, kind of just where you're like grounded and just kind of forced to like, ooh, okay. And that's when like he's trying to explain, here's your check, it's a refund check, you can take it down the street and get it cashed. And she's like, she doesn't care about the money. She simply says like, my husband's dead, isn't he? And like, well, yeah, kind of like Sam, quit being a douche. Like, come on, man. But when she like freaks out and breaks down saying like, where's his body? What did you guys do with the body? I took that like, that was such a powerful scene to me because it's like, she needs something to actually be able to say goodbye to. She's going to have closure for her children and for herself. There's no moving forward without some way of being able to say goodbye. And the government has completely disregarded like any kind of emotion for the children and for the wife. And it was like that was a powerful scene to me because it was like, oh, this scene's not funny. Like, this is brutal. Like, what'd you do with the body? And judging how they like handle everything else, it's wasted. It's, Mr. Buttle is probably just cast wherever, lost or forgotten in like the corner of the torture room. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure he's dumped in some landfill or something, some very heartless and ineffective system, just like everything else. It is very, I think it's telling, of course, that he could just be like lost or dumped or something that's very inefficient, but he could also certainly be they don't want to admit any more guilt than they already have. Like, we've issued a refund. That's as much as you're going to get as far as any sort of responsibility. If we, give your husband's body back and all this stuff, and that's more involvement than we want. We really just want to wash our hands and move on from it. And it also could be that they don't see that they need to give her husband's body back because it's not really hers, and his body's not even really his. Like, they kind of just run and own everything. Like, you belong to the system, you belong to the government, and they we'll take care of everything. Don't worry about it, kind of thing.
Yeah. Even down from like something that serious with like the deceased, a wrongful death or whatever, from something serious like that to something so simple and ridiculous as fixing your own goddamn HVAC or going through someone else to like find a fix for it, an easier, simpler fix, DIY, if you will, with your
Yeah.
favorite character, with Harry Tuttle, the way he fixes the heating in Sam's apartment, where he's like, I just got to put this like converter or whatever the hell it is. Like,
yeah. It's like, I can't fix it, but we can go around it if I put this thing on.
right. And it'll work. You'll be good. So he does. And then that gets him in trouble too. And it's like, they even tell him, you're not allowed to fix this yourself. You're not allowed to go around doing things this way. You have to go through the proper channels. You have to follow the paperwork.
Right.
Like,
yeah. They need to manage everything and do everything appropriately. And yeah, that's why I love Harry, the Archibald Tuttle's character. His nickname's Harry. That's why I love him so much. He's just kind of like, yeah, everybody's just forcing all of this, red tape and nonsense that's really just slowing things down, when I can just get in, get out, get things fixed, get things done. And it's so efficient and effective. And that's very helpful. Like, it's very helpful for him to, like, he could call the central services and wait 4 to 6 weeks and actually get somebody out there to fix his AC or whatever. Or he could just have this guy show up who knows how to do it, who can jerry rig it or whatever and get it fixed. And that's just such a stark contrast to the complicated bureaucracy of all of this other stuff that's going on. And I say it all the time. I've been saying it this whole episode. That's exactly what we have now. It's like, if you're a single mom and you need to take care of your children at home, you could be a hairdresser. You could cut hair in your free time at home, but you can't fucking do that because you need a license. You need all of this other certification. You need business taxes. You need all this other stuff, which create barriers to prevent you from taking care of these things.
Yeah.
And it's just a whole thing. So yeah, completely accurate, completely realistic. That's why Harry Tuttle is my hero and the hero of the movie, even though Sam is the focal point.
It doesn't bear anything to the story of the film. It's just a fun set piece and just way of how Terry Gilliam's films always include, or at least those earlier films always used to include, his use of like miniatures and the practical effect that he'll incorporate into his set pieces, because they're grand sets, and he does this in almost every one of his movies, where the visuals are just so striking because they're off-putting, because and they're illusions. They do it in Brazil, where it's like you think the city is just this huge grand thing, and you see the old man come over the top of it, and you're like, what the fuck? And then it's a model that he literally picks up. But with Harry, that scene where he fixes the heating element, when he zip lines down, it's such a cool and very smooth, very clean cut from the actor, De Niro being on the cable, to a little miniature, like plastic figure that they just sent down on the zip line in a miniature set. It's just like, because when you see it happen, it's pretty seamless. It's very cool looking.
Yeah.
But that downward shot into the city as Harry like zip lines into the next window, it looks so cool. And that was one thing that I wrote down of just like, that feels like a Gilliam miniature set. This feels like that. Tim Burton has this big gothic kind of set pieces. Terry Gilliam's got his giant, just off-putting illusion kind of set piece. Very fun, very fun. I just had to comment on that because I loved his use of the practical and the miniature sets, because I think Gilliam is such a master at miniature set pieces. He just knows how to make them look so huge and utilize them in the best ways. And I think it works best because they do make you feel kind of odd. You know, everything's either like everyone's way off the ground or the walls around them are like unjustifiably gigantic for any human to actually bother making. It's just very fun set pieces. Now back to our hey, authoritarian government is bad.
No, I completely agree. I think the set design was great, and the style is great, and that shot of the old man, just like his head coming up over the city. You see it in the trailer, and it's one of the like main things. You're like, what the fuck is this movie about? And then you see it in the movie, and you're like, oh, it's like a 5-second thing that really doesn't mean anything. It just looked kind of cool.
It just looks cool.
Yeah. No, I like the style of it for sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of style and fixing AC units, though, how about Bob Hoskins and his gigantic
ball cap? Okay, I'm not gonna lie.
The bill on his hat is fucking 12 inches long,
so huge.
And he's having this conversation as if he doesn't have a 12-inch ball cap bill, and it's the funniest thing ever.
I had one Bob Hoskins. Seeing him in this was fun because it was like he was another one that I had no clue was going to pop up. So I was still, I feel, I don't want to say recovering, but still kind of like understanding that Robert De Niro is in this weird ass movie. And then Bob Hoskins shows up and I was like, and fucking Bob Hoskins is popping up with the weirdest hat. And then I thought that'd be a fun hat to have. Probably not to wear, but just to like have.
Yeah. It would, absolutely. You would turn some heads if you had a hat like that.
You would turn some heads like that. And I love his character because I think he plays him kind of ridiculous and just kind of like he's over the top, but not as you would think, in my opinion, because he's invasive because he's part of the Central Service crew. So he's kind of entitled, him and his mumbly partner. They're just funny to watch to me as they're like, you called us, so we're here to fix it. And he's like, it's already fixed. Who touched it? Who fixed your unit?
Yeah, you're not allowed to do that. And then, they basically investigate his house by using the loophole of, you said it was an emergency. And so now we get this emergency power because you called us and we're taking every wire and every duct out of your walls in order to fix this problem. And then they leave it unfixed basically as a way to punish him. It feels like that, you went around the system and now we're going to make your life even more inconvenient by unfixing it and then leaving it unfixed, and your whole house is in disarray.
Right. Hope you learned your lesson, bub.
Yeah.
The hat.
Yeah, but they are pretty fun.
That hat, though. Oh my god. Yeah, that first time I watched it, I missed like his first couple of lines because the hat was so distracting to me. Because at first I was like, does it just look like the bill?
I know. I was like, is this a camera trick or is that can't be real, right?
Right. And then he turns his head and you're like, oh dear God, it's real. Like,
look, this is a style choice that he's going for.
Those are the worst work uniforms ever. Yeah, them like the punishment of we're going to leave this giant mess behind. It kind of reminded me of those movies where like the FBI will come and search a home and they're tossing every paper, every drawer, every couch cushion, they're tearing open, just throwing it. And then they're like, well, we didn't find anything. Okay, bye. That's what it reminded me of.
Thanks a lot.
Like, just come in, force your power, and then leave and just fuck everybody else. You know, God, this movie.
Yeah. When the truth is that he's lucky that's all they did. Like, making a mess is a good scenario. They could kill your dog. They could kill your family. Whoops, sorry. Didn't mean to do that.
Our bad. Oh, you're saving money that's not in a bank? Well, we're going to have to confiscate that shit right there. How dare you?
Yeah. Yeah, it was such an odd thing when you learn that Robert De Niro's character is Archibald Tuttle, you're like, this guy, the guy who just showed up, and granted he pointed a gun at you, but he is trying to fix your AC. Like, it's kind of a weird thing for this to be the guy that they wanted to arrest him the way they arrested poor Archie Buttle. Um, and so you're like, why is this guy such a bad dude? And sure, he looks like a bad dude. He's got a sweet ski mask. He looks like a fucking Navy SEAL mercenary guy flying down rooftops and all this stuff. But he's a tradesman. He's like just fixing stuff. Uh, and and the more I thought of it, I was like, that is all it is that he's working outside the approved system, and they can't have that.
Yeah.
Like, we have that now. That's why Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is such a huge concern, because it defunds the centralized banking. There's a whole conspiracy thing, we could go into it, but we're not going to. But it's also why Ross Ulbricht is serving 2 life sentences for creating a website, is because you could buy and sell things outside of the approved system and outside of the approved taxation and fines and regulation and all that stuff. And it's very simple to do that. But more than anything in the world, they don't want you to do that. And
Right.
so I think that's why he was a target, is just that he was fixing stuff in an unapproved way. And that's all it took.
Yeah, he's fixing stuff outside the standards and practices, if you will. Jill becomes wanted by the state because she's trying to speak up for Mrs. Buttle, and she's like kind of understanding, hey, you guys are like unjustified, you were wrong. And then she is in the wrong place at the wrong time, where she gets accused of setting bombs because she's also not following their standardized procedures.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I thought it was interesting that Sam kind of jumps to that conclusion. It's kind of, I think, illustrates that he's still very much a product of the environment, stuck in, like, he's like, well, she must be then a terrorist if she's carrying around this thing, and my car was on fire, she was near it. I get, like, of course it makes sense. Of course she's a terrorist.
Yeah, she's got to be the terrorist. It's a bomb. I knew it was a bomb, and then it's a bribery with the same fucking Christmas presents that everyone else is getting.
Yeah.
We obviously have to go with the party that Sam attends, where he sees his mom, where she does look like, you can tell she looks younger. And that's where her friend shows up. She's like, oh, I had a complication. And you're like, this is not good.
Yeah.
But at the party is where he's like, because at this point, I mean, Sam's like kind of become obsessed with chasing Jill down. I mean, she's like in his dreams, he feels he loves her, which, like, dude.
We gotta get to the dreams.
All for being passionate. But I think we have to understand that Sam's obsession is a little bit on the stalker creeper side.
It makes me question why he dreamed of this woman he's never met, like how her face came into his vision, if it's just subconscious and she's been monitored by the government and he kind of saw her photo or something, and subconsciously it kind of got stuck in his brain, or what, if it's more kind of stalkery or whatever. I don't really know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I kind of didn't really think about it at first, but the more when I started trying to break it down, the second viewing, I kind of thought, with what you said that first time, of like I think because he's around so many screens and so many people are constantly being watched and monitored, and notes are being detailed about their lives constantly, that maybe her face did come across his screen handful of times.
Yeah.
And
as soon as when he goes into that building, she's on the screen a bunch, and it seems to be like she's being watched just because she got in line to complain about a wrongful arrest, that she's kind of a focus by the system, it seems like.
Yeah, because she's a ripple, right, in a nice calm water.
Right.
She's that little ripple effect. Not to go super metaphor, but yeah, that party where he kind of like begs to get the promotion that his boss forged the signature to deny the promotion, which was
yeah. Well, because he realizes that in order to get the information he needs, he basically needs a higher position, and so he decides to take the promotion he didn't really want, just so he can get more information.
Right.
Basically,
and
you skipped over the invitation.
I did.
The, party,
the invitation is also one of the scenes that when it happened that first time I watched the movie, I was again like,
what the fuck am I watching? It is the worst singing telegram I've ever seen in my life. I haven't seen that many, but it stands out as
pretty
the
bad
worst for sure.
It's hard to understand half of what she screeches.
As she like dances around the room.
Yeah.
But
it is funny.
It's funny when he tries to sing his reply, and she's like, "No, you don't have to sing.
You don't have to
just
sing.
Tell me."
He's like, "Oh, okay."
He's like, "But didn't the party start like an hour ago?" And she's like, "Yeah, we're backed up. Everybody complains about it." It's a funny. There are definitely funny jokes in it, and there's probably the funniest joke that I laughed at was at the party. It's the scene when he meets the other couple, his old friend or whatever, and they're like, yeah, she had some work done and really had to reduce some things, and he's like, oh wow, I didn't know. I think he's talking about a breast reduction, and he's like, oh, everybody always wondered if they are real or not, and she's like, my ears? Like,
yeah.
He's like, yeah, we all thought you wear false ears. Apparently, that's how I'm getting out of this conversation. Yeah, I laughed at that scene for sure.
The jokes in it, I mean, it definitely is a very funny movie. There's a lot of little quick gags that are done. Like we mentioned at the beginning, when they're trying to patch the hole in the roof at the Buttles, and it just falls straight through. That made me laugh out loud because I like that kind of comedy where it's just so dumb.
Yeah,
gags like that are good, and Brazil is pretty full with stupid gags like that, like him having to share the desk that goes through the wall. How inefficient is that idea? And they have like a tug of war on it.
You can tell that he gets promoted, he goes into this new office, and they're like, welcome to this high floor, like you've really made it now, you're really advancing your career, you have this number on your office and you're a big deal. And he goes in there, it's this smallest little, like, I guess it is an office. He didn't have an office, he had like a cubicle before, but it's the smallest little space, and you can tell that the wall in the middle is like a new wall that they just put up, like that they definitely split this room in half. But the fact that they split the desk in half, and there's a gap in the wall where it's shared, and his neighbor is fighting for enough desk space by pulling it through the wall. I laughed as he goes in there, his books keep falling over, and then he's like losing desk space. He's trying to figure out what's happening. It was very clever. I liked it.
Yeah, it made me laugh pretty hard. I love stupid gags like that. And then him going into the office, never having met this dude before. They introduce each other, and Sam's immediate thought is like, oh, I'm using your computer, and just like makes his way. And the guy's like, whoa.
Yeah. He's like, I'm a whiz. I'm pretty good at this computer. Let me do it for you. And then it's like, peck, like typing. He's like, no, I think it's broken. You haven't turned it on yet.
Right. Like, have you tried the power yet? Oh.
Yeah. This is a guy who's working in the upper level of the government. Yeah.
Because that position is very high up, as they mentioned. If you can catch it, because his new boss or coworker,
I think lead? Boss.
I don't know.
Yeah, team lead's accurate. The guy that's walking around with his coat over his shoulder, everybody's following him, also with their coats over their shoulder.
Yeah, all carrying their little, and well, they're not little. Everything's like exaggerated in size, whether
Yeah.
it's very small or larger than what it needs to be. Like the paper, there's no normal size paper. It's all those weird, long, thin strips, and you're like,
Yeah, it's like, how do you print this?
what is the purpose of this paper?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, at that party, we really derailed. That's okay. At the party, when he's talking to the old dude, the bathroom, and he's like helping him shake it, essentially by shaking his whole body. It kind of reminded me of that scene from the Ice Harvest.
Yeah.
Just slam me down real hard.
Yeah.
It'll drop out. Has nothing to do with Brazil, but go watch the Ice Harvest. It's funny. When they're talking and he like asks for the promotion again, and the guy's like giving him that message, oh, your father did the RIMJH, right? Isn't that? Yeah. That was, it took me a second to be like, what did he write on the powder? Because I didn't catch it the first time. All I caught was him like brushing it off, and I was like, what the fuck? Wait a minute. I feel like I missed something really important, and I did. But that, I was like, why does this feel kind of out of place? That now there's like, it felt Secret Cody, and that felt out of place, but at the same time, like, does anything actually feel out of place in this movie? Because it's so random, but it's all good. Like, so far, everything actually works together. So it was nice when you saw that come to fruition later. But him getting that promotion at the party cracked me up, just because it was like, this party is full of people that are so full of themselves, and they all just kind of like want to flaunt whatever it is they think they have. And it's like, just come on, Sam. I get that you're doing it so that you can get to Jill, but this just, man, there's got to be better ways to do this. And of course, like, my suspicions were kind of correct, because every decision Sam makes is the wrong fucking decision in this movie. But
right. So did RIMJH mean something? Did I miss that?
It's just that code for the elevator.
But like the words or letters don't mean like a secret thing.
No, I saw a thing
elevator
where it's supposed to be like I think it's an anagram, where if you scramble the letters, it's like Jeremiah something. If I remember reading it right, of course, it was the one thing that I read and was like, oh, interesting, but did not write it down.
Because it's not that interesting.
Well, no, it's interesting, because if I remember right, it was like, that was what Sam's dad's name was. So it was almost like Sam's dad was actually, big spoiler, the actual guy who kind of ran the whole shindig. And they hint to that when he's in the office and you see the photograph of his mom on the desk. But yeah, it was interesting. It's just my stupid brain. I'm pretty sure I read that right. I'm gonna have to fact check, but
I think that would make sense as Jeremiah. The thing I noticed was that when he punches in the letters in the elevator key code, it makes the song.
Yeah,
the Brazil song. It's like the beginning of the song, and that, I can't believe we're an hour and 40 minutes into this episode and haven't talked about the fucking song, because
it's like
such
the
a
only
weird
piece
thing.
of music that plays in the movie, just different variations of it.
And it's such a weird thing for a movie to have a title based on a song that plays during the movie. Like, there's a famous song from like the 40s or 30s or something, 1939, I think, and they basically took that song and put it in the movie, and then decided that it's so important and so good that they'll play it all the time in variations. And then it will also be the title of the movie, Brazil, even though the song doesn't really have anything to do with
anything
the movie
to do
itself.
with it. I was trying to look up like why is it called Brazil? What was the purpose? The most I found was that it's still rumor. Nothing's ever, I guess, been confirmed, at least through a couple of the pages I went on.
Yeah.
But I guess Terry Gilliam was at a beach and was
Hmm.
listening to that song, or he saw a guy listening to that song on the beach, and he just thought like, oh, what was it? He had the idea of, wouldn't that be interesting for like that piece of music or that kind of scene of someone going for that aesthetic in like a dystopian world or whatever.
Hmm.
Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But
Yeah, I could see that, just kind of getting that vibe. The song
yeah,
is definitely a vibe, I think, that, and that's why it plays in different speeds and different styles throughout the whole movie. It was very interesting to me that the song kind of breaks the fourth wall as well, that it's not just part of the soundtrack that the audience hears, but it's in the movie, it's in the elevator code, it's in the main character humming it and singing it
yeah,
and all this stuff. Like it's kind of a part of the movie, uh, in the story and in the experience of the audience as well.
yeah. The song kind of serves, especially with the humming of it. To me, kind of humming, or it plays a part of the representation of the other, something better that you can
Hmm.
try to get to. Um, Trying to word it correctly because we're still a good ways away from. How are we an hour and 44
From
minutes
the
in and
ending.
we're like at the party? Um, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah,
We're
it's
not we're not doing the scene by scene breakdown. We're just like, but the discussion of the movie is
yeah.
interesting because I knew it was going to be such a triggering film for you. Like I said, I was like, man, this has to be like super. Jake loved it. It probably triggered him heavily. And
Yeah,
every scene of
in a
the
good way.
movie, I was just like, man, I bet Jake is just like, this is fucking happening. Like, this is what we don't want, like, people.
There were so many times that happened, like different lines of dialogue. There's a scene where, uh, let me find it. There's a scene that is very appropriate to exactly what you're saying. Where, where's the fucking credit score scene? Hold on, let me search for this. Credit rating. Yeah, there's a scene where he's like, "Don't fight it, son. Just confess quickly. If you hold out too long, it could jeopardize your credit rating." And I was like, "This happened during COVID. Like there were so many things. It was a joke in 1985, but it's real now. This exact tactic was used during COVID. That just give in. We're not making you do it. We're not mandating anything,
Yeah.
but." If you don't do it, you won't be allowed to work and you won't be allowed to go into the grocery store and you'll have your children taken away. So we're just going to beat you down until you
Yeah.
decide.
Uh,
But it's your choice if you want to do that.
and to the point where neighbors were being encouraged to call the cops on neighbors who had small gatherings or anyone over. Um, yeah, what a weird time, dude. But we don't need to go down that rabbit hole. That's a
Yeah,
scary
we'll be
rabbit
here
hole to go
forever.
down to. Um,
Yeah.
Ow. Sorry, I had like an eyelash in my eye. Now it's all fucked up. Uh,
It's the government's fault.
probably. Damn you! Uh,
We haven't really talked about his dream very much.
okay, let's get to
And
the dreams because there's a couple, and then one kind of mix, like
yeah.
vision or hallucination, what have you.
Hmm.
Yeah, Sam dreams of himself being this like angel figure with weird hair,
Yeah.
David Bowie makeup, uh, which was honestly, that first dream was kind of off-putting, and I was a little
Hmm.
like, I hope this isn't the look of the main guy because I'm probably not gonna take it too serious. But then I was like, but
Yeah.
maybe that's the point. But that was neither here nor there. Um, Yeah, and
The
Jill.
first dream is very much just he's flying across a beautiful field, and then these skyscrapers, gray, ugly skyscrapers, burst through the ground, ruining the countryside. And I guess that's basically his whole dream, is that the civilization that he's trying to escape and would enjoy a nice, peaceful, open, free landscape is just being ruined and smothered by these cities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you've got like freaky baby faced monster people things.
Uh-huh.
Jill with long hair is constantly like trapped because that
Yeah.
very first vision or dream that he has, she's like floating in the air while he's flying in the clouds, and then then she's always in a cage from like
Yeah.
there on out.
Yeah, whether she's being drugged around by those baby scary monsters, or she gets cut loose and is floating away in
Yeah.
that cage, and he has to like try to catch her. I very much felt that he has like, he would love to be a hero. He would love to save the princess. He would love to, like, whether it's I think the wings, of course, represent freedom and flying and all of that stuff, but then also just fighting to save, fighting to be a hero. It would be great to be a hero. It'd be great
Yeah.
to have any sort of accomplishment
Well,
in that sense.
it's like in his dreams, he's got courage to fight. He's
Yeah,
got courage to, or just in general,
to stand up
yeah.
when he doesn't in normal life. Doesn't stand up to his mom. Doesn't stand up to anybody
he's
else.
he kind of like his attire is like warrior angel attire.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a big old breastplate. He's got armor on. He's got the cool sword that he's not really great with, but at least he's got one. But
yeah, he fights that giant samurai.
Samurai.
It's like a samurai warrior robot.
Which
thing.
was another moment that first time I was watching it. The samurai showed up and it was like, what the fuck? Now there's a samurai?
Yeah, of course there's a samurai. It's very subtle, but if you look closely, the samurai has like knobs and computer like parts as part of its like armor. And so I took it as like that's his battle against the information apparatus, the government's like the government machine, basically. If he can defeat that, then he can save Jill and he can be free, that kind of thing, I think.
Oh,
but it's such an odd, it's very much cut in a way that you see these different dreams, and then from each one it cuts to him in the real world and he's always waking up. You're like, he definitely was just dreaming that thing. And so I was thinking that the whole time. I still think that the whole time. But there's a part where it makes me question it, which is the end. I don't know if it's too early to get to the end, but you did already bring up the baby mask.
Yeah, well, I brought up the baby mask, but like, I know where you're going. I know what you're about to say. I was hoping not to get to it that early because I was going to ask you the question. So
okay, I have specific notes for that. We will wait.
Okay. So before we get to that, I mean, I guess we could. Since we're not like actually doing scene by scene, I guess just the conversation. It doesn't really matter.
I wrote down like all of the different themes that I identified in the movie, and of course, authoritarianism and all of that stuff is a big part of it. The heroism and the romance that he longs for is a big part of it. I don't. One of the reasons I think that this movie should be talked about more is I think that it has to have been very inspirational. I mentioned the opening scene with the cold open and then the explosion instantly reminded me of Children of Men. And I was like, that's one of my favorite sci-fi movies. It has to be influenced by that. There's so many Blade Runner type things. Blade Runner, just the aesthetic and the style and all of that, but also just like there's scenes where there's a stabbing saxophone, like noir style. I was like, that's so Blade Runner-y. And then the love story is so similar to like the Truman Show in my mind, that he has this longing for someone that he's never met, that he knows so specifically, but she's kind of outside of his realm, and he, so there's just so many different things. I was like, it had to have been influenced by all of that stuff.
I didn't even think about the Truman Show parallel. That's a really interesting
Yeah,
one.
it's just like a normal guy who's kind of in a system and doesn't really know or doesn't really care too much until he doesn't want to bring down the system. He just really wants to find meaning in his life and
A big,
and a more meaningful relationship with this woman.
yeah. A big theme to me, besides the obvious, the authoritarian or anti-authoritarian kind of like, we have to get away from this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I took this movie as and again, conjecture, I guess. Like, this is just kind of what I took.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this movie really boils down to Sam just trying to find his own identity, because he's always just having to follow the path that's kind of put before him by his mom's influence. If you follow the kind of, I guess, theory that his dad, the Jeremiah, was like, is the head of all things,
Mm-hmm.
then I kind of took it as a journey of finding identity, and kind of, it kind of reminded me, obviously, of like, not to spoil it instantly, but kind of Shutter Island parallel of like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That was a big thing to me that I really respected on it. I was like, I obviously I'm a big fan when a movie can like hit some deep chords, and I feel like identity is such a massive subject that so many people misinterpret. If you like,
Yeah.
everyone wants to find themselves, everyone wants to know who they are, and that sure, but your identity, like, you have to know your identity. You need someone to help influence you to find and become your identity. You're only, you know, you, and if you know that you're going to aspire to something greater, then you need to work towards that you're worth more. So I think that's like a big thing for Sam, is he constantly, and that's kind of to me what his dreams represent, of just, he knows he can do more. He's capable of something greater than what he's doing. Even though when you first meet him, he's very much like, I just want to stay where I'm at. I'm just like, leave me alone. Yeah. And that's relatable too,
that's
because
the trap.
That's the trap.
It's what's comfortable.
Yeah. And in a way, that's his way of rebelling against that path of influence. It's like his whole life has already been. So if he can use complacency and kind of a like dead end job, then that's what he wants to do. But he knows he should and can do so many greater things, which I guess kind of really fuels his drive and obsession for Jill, because he's like, he just connects her to that. Of course, assuming the question that you and I were probably both thinking, and we're going to ask each other.
So before that, other important themes I think are vanity, of course, with the plastic surgery and every emphasis on fashion and all of that stuff, even down to, I guess the vanity ties in very heavily with consumerism. Setting it at Christmas, there's a lot of like consumerist things that happen. That's just in the background. It's not a big part of the story, but you see, like, during the big Christmas shopping spree, there's a lady with a sign that's like, "Consumers for Christ." Like,
right.
It's more about consumerism than it is about the actual religious holiday. And the little girl on Santa's lap, she's like, "I want a credit card." And all the ads for the ducks is like, you can dress up your ducks to make them look so nice. Like, that's the vanity and the consumerism kind of crossing over with each other, instead of actually addressing the real problem. It's just like, we'll just cover it up and it'll be out of sight, out of mind. So that's not good. Without talking about the main point of their relationship and ultimately where his journey ends, which is, I think, the most important part of the movie. That's all I've got, really.
Okay. Well, that fucking baby mask, dude. The fucking baby mask. When he gets knocked out the first time after the big bombing in the store, my complication had a complication. Gross.
Yeah.
When he got knocked out, I was like, oh, did he just get arrested? But of course, he's like free to roam in the truck, and it's only when he's like still pursuing and the guy knocks him out again. And then it's like he's back home. But when he's actually arrested, which, I mean, bad timing, dude. At least you got laid once, I guess.
Yeah. It's interesting, like, you see her with long hair and you're like, are you still dreaming? And then she pulls it off and it's a wig.
Yeah.
That took me out of it for a second. I was like, where did you get a wig? Like, what am I crazy right now?
No, I just, like, I was confused on the wig, but since they're at his mom's home,
No, that's true.
I was like, oh yeah, his mom would totally have, I mean, she's already doing all the plastic surgery and have all the accoutrement of stuff to change her appearance. So
I was gonna make a joke about his mom's lingerie again, but she doesn't really wear any lingerie.
no,
She wears a ribbon.
but it is freaky when he's on his run around in a few scenes and he sees his mom at the funeral and it's Jill.
Yeah.
Which I think the actress that played Jill, when she's playing that iteration of his mom, she's like perfect in that scene. All the little nuances that she does with her face are just like, to me, I was, yeah, this is something about that really, really caught my attention, and I focused pretty heavily on that both times watching it. But before that, he finally, like, him finally getting laid, and he's like, I got this plan, and he goes out and he does the air I am in the elevator, getting away from the Russian Nazi cops, who literally have the like Soviet Union propaganda sign, but it's like not the Russian. But if you've ever seen historical photos, you're like, that's
yeah, same style, same colors.
Yeah,
same,
you're like, that's a very
information is power and
dark period of time right there, folks. Okay. For those that don't know the Soviet Union propaganda signs from back in the day, you should have paid more attention in history class. We'll just leave it at that.
Google it.
Google it, yeah. No, that's too easy, Jake. You should have paid attention in history. History's important. Damn it.
You mean the government runs schools? Yeah, good idea.
I meant like...
And tell the whole story.
Yeah, no. We'll erase that part. We don't need this. We'll pretend this moment never happened.
On a list.
Lost my train of thought. Thanks, Jake.
All good. So I don't remember where we are. He got arrested. He got arrested the second time.
He's been arrested after getting laid.
Fully arrested. Straight jacketed. Whole 9 yards. Yeah.
And that's when, like, they list off all of his offenses, which is essentially the whole movie you have watched. That's the, like, everything this dude has done since he went to the office late has been held against him as like a federal fucking crime. This is nuts. A couple of them you're like, yeah, forging a signature on a government document, that's gonna get you in trouble.
Yeah, we get that.
But letting a guy fix your HVAC unit unsanctioned, like,
even just
that
trying
just
to
saved
fix
you some
the
money.
error
You were
that
just trying to fix the error.
everybody knew was an error. You're trying to fix that. That's not allowed either because it
Yeah.
was sanctioned and closed.
But yeah, then they're like, he's taken into the torture room, or like that big dome
Interrogation.
interrogation.
Yeah.
And did you notice it's like all dentist style chair and tray and some of the
Yeah.
tools, minus the
Very
pacifier and
uncomfortable.
the rubber ball,
Yeah,
which are again
that's true.
like, what the fuck is a pacifier and a bouncy ball doing on this tray of torture? I'm not gonna
Hmm.
I'm not gonna go
I
down
don't
that
want to
rabbit
find
hole.
out. I know that.
But then the doctor, his friend, comes walking in, and that was like the baby mask. Yeah, he has
Hmm.
that. Dude, the shot is weird.
Yeah.
It's such a like, it doesn't feel right. It feels just
Hmm.
slightly, I don't know, off
Off.
keel. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
But he does that like weird turn, and that was the screenshot with the baby mask. And to me, I
Hmm.
was like, oh, now I have all the context. I understand all the context for this movie, because that was the screenshot. It's always that
Yeah.
and the mom, or the lady's, before you know it's his
Hmm.
mom, but her cheeks being pulled off of her face.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Stretched.
I just shook my head of just like, this is such a fucked up way to like culminate. This is like his friend, his only
Yeah.
actual friend throughout the movie, up until his friend's like, dude,
Hmm.
stay away from me until this all blows over. Like, oh.
Yeah, and it's for fans of Monty Python, it's fun having Michael Palin play Jack Lind. He's great in it. But from the first time that he goes up to his office, he's been promoted. He goes up to his office. He talks to the lady at the receptionist desk, and she's like transcribing the torture that's been happening,
Yeah.
and then and you like are reading it on the paper, and then she pulls off a headphone and you hear like screams of agony as they're trying to like interrogate this person, and she's like, oh hun, can I get you who are you here to see and all this stuff.
Right.
And then he goes into his office and he has like blood all over his trench coat, and he's like, oh hey, nice to see you in my office, congratulations on the promotion and all this stuff, welcome to the top floor. And this should be a glaring red flag to him. But then, yeah, of course, the friendship is not of actual substance, because when
Right.
he's in the actual torture chair, he's in the padded room and all that stuff, the guy's going to toe the company line. He's going to do the job and not actually be your friend. And for him to be wearing the baby mask, the thing that I have the biggest question about, and that I am curious if you were also touching on, is the baby mask is shown at the end in the interrogation scene. The doctor's wearing it for whatever reason. I call him a doctor. He's wearing a lab coat. He's not really a doctor. He's just a torture guy. He's wearing a baby mask, but you saw the baby mask earlier in his dream with when the creatures that were pulling Jill in the floating cage, they had baby masks on. They lifted their veil and they have a baby mask on. Which makes me so curious if it's told in order and the dreams are actual dreams, and every time you see him wake up, that's from the dream that you just saw. It makes sense when you're watching it. But how did he know? How did he envision A, meeting Jill, and B, this baby mask at all? Why would you imagine a baby mask in any way, shape, or form? So part of me is like, either, okay, I have two theories. One, the Jill thing doesn't matter, and he just for some reason had picked up on her picture subconsciously and fell in love with her before he actually met her, and that's the dreams. That's why she was in his dreams. But the baby mask is so specific that I feel like when he sees his friend wearing the baby mask at the interrogation room, potentially he's already losing his mind and superimposing the dream mask onto his torturer guy. That's one option. The other option is that the dreams are all out of order, and they aren't what he's waking up from the whole part of the movie. He's having the dreams as part of his after he's lost his mind at
Right.
the end of the movie, and they're all foreshadowing of where he will end up, basically. Those are the only things I can think of. Does that have anything to do with what you thought that they were?
Yeah.
Okay.
I figured when the baby mask came up that first time, I was just kind of like very thrown off by it because it felt random and out of place, but at the same time, it was very much like, oh, there's such that crazy focus on it. Like he has that specific turn, which feels off. That shot feels so purposefully wrong,
Right.
that I think there's something more to what is happening. I had wondered with not the first time, because the first time I was just still trying to figure out what I was watching. But that second time I watched it, I definitely had that thought during when the like baby masks in his dream are first revealed. And I had that thought of like, well, wait a minute. I wonder how much of the journey in the film actually happens or happened, and how much is like, is this just the way his mind is replaying the events to find peace or whatnot. And the big one that really, it's not even the baby mask that actually makes me question the sequence or like the events. It's when he fights the samurai in the store after the bombing happens, when Jill, like him and Jill have that very split second argument where he's like, you know, you're a terrorist. I fucking knew it was a bomb. And she's like, it's bribes. Now help me help these people. And they like immediately are like okay with each other. But then the samurai shows up and he has to fight the samurai again. But then he gets knocked out. I wonder if his mind, if the events actually happened. So the Buttle Tuttle thing actually happened. Or not if, but I think majority of the events that we see in the film actually happen. But I think when he loses his mind is superimposing all of the, or kind of like splicing in the fantasy stuff, the baby mask, which I think he sees for the first time on Jack. But then as his mind is processing leaving, if you will, that image is just seared into it and into his memories or in his fantasy. And I think all the angel stuff is actually where his mind has just kind of gone. That's how his mind has decided to process. So I don't think they're actually in order. I think the sequences or the fantasy dreams, whatever, are actually kind of reversed. I think the first one we ever see is actually how his story is over, because I think that's heaven. Because they tell him in the padded cell, which I think he actually was in. I think he was in the padded cell. They tell him, you know, well, it turns out Jill died resisting arrest. And he's like, oh, I did that. Because that's when you find out that was his plan to get Jill off the grid and out of the government's eyes by killing her.
He prints the paper that says that puts her in the system as having been deceased.
Yeah.
And then he says, and then he tells her that he killed her off.
And it's like the most romantic but off-putting gross line of all time, where she's like, you care for a little necrophilia? And you're like, I get the joke. I would be down for the joke. Gross.
Yeah. Yeah, there's better ways to go about that.
Right. But I mean, that's a well-timed
but good on you.
So yeah,
I mean, I'm not opposed to it.
But then that old guy in the padded cell tells him, like, well, the weird thing is it happened twice. And that's kind of, you're like, oh twice. Shit, Jill died. And that was the machine gun fire you hear when the screen goes black during his arrest. So I think the the dream fantasies or whatever are actually reversed. And I think the events of the movie actually happened. And when he sees the samurai, I think that's when they're kind of like his mind is actually crossing. So
Okay.
that's kind of my theory. So similar to what you were thinking, I think the movie is definitely post interrogation.
Oh, you think the whole movie is? Yeah.
I think the whole movie is pretty much post interrogation. It's just his mind. This is how his mind is processing it. So you, as the viewer, know how he got to that chair.
I think that tracks, and even if not, I do find it interesting. One of the things I read is that Terry Gilliam came up with the end first, and admitted that the whole ending of the movie is basically what he had decided on. How do you get a character to that place where they have decided what world could they be in where they, as a mechanism to refuse to be a part of it any longer, essentially it's a better outcome to break mentally, to lose your mind, to avoid that suffering. What sort of a world and what sort of a life would get them to that place, and then worked backwards from there and ended up in this kind of world. And so I think that whether he meant to tell the story in that way or not, it makes sense that that's how the story was devised and written, that you get to that place, you do that thing, and then work back from there, basically.
Yeah. I also read, and I know you read this too. Actually, this was like part of the thread that I saw, that message thread, that I was like, oh shit, they're talking about the ending. Was the studio hated his version or his ending to the point where they like re-edited it and like forced him to have the happy ending. They have like a name for it. I can't remember what the name for it is.
Yeah, it's the Love Conquers All version.
Love Conquers All,
the Scheinberg edit. Sid Sheinberg was the executive at Universal, I think.
Where it ends on the happy note. Part of me thought when I finished it the second time of like, I'm curious to watch the happy ending version just to see, like, do they cut it off with them in their little house that he's like, that's where he's going to, I don't want to say live out his days, but that's where he's like ending it. That's the only like possible spot I feel they could have ended it, in this Love Conquers All. But I thought the movie wouldn't make sense if it ended like that. And I don't know if it's just because the version we watched is Terry Gilliam's original ending. Like, this is his version.
Yeah, we did watch the whole 142-minute European version, director's cut version, which I think is what he fought to get out there. But I was reading some of what the other version has, and it seems like it's not just the ending change. A lot of other things along the way change to make it try to be more lighthearted, cut out swearing and things like that. But then also, I think some of the terrorism was kind of moved around and stuff. So it seemed like a much more complicated thing. I'd be interested in seeing it for sure, but I do really like this one. I liked particularly when it seems like there's going to be a happy ending and it's like kind of all sunny and fields and stuff. And then you see those two men kind of just enter frame.
Well, yeah, it's like a hard cut of just like, nope.
Yeah, they interrupt the fantasy by like bursting into it basically, and then that's when you kind of realize, no, you are stuck here, you are going crazy and you're never getting out. And I'm like, I love this movie. This is so dark, so twisted, but so perfect.
I love the ending. And when I found out about like the other kind of ending or cuts, I was like, man, that just feels wrong, because this cut genuinely makes sense. Terry Gilliam was right to stick to his guns with this and fuck everyone else. His vision was right. And as dark and, not exactly the happy ending that you might want, it's like a bittersweet ending because him ending up with Jill just wouldn't actually track with the rest of the movie, I feel, unless you rewrote the entire rest of the movie, shuffling stuff around or taking a little terrorism out. I don't think would actually help make it make sense. Him and Jill, to me, his obsession with Jill and their connection makes more sense as if that's like more his mind kind of like piecing it together.
Coping.
Especially finding out that she was actually murdered. Like now he's really going to, and if you think of it that way, at least to me, that explains like the whole idea of like, you have to keep going. We have to keep driving. We have to keep, as he's like frantically telling her, and in the dreams or the fantasies, whatever they are, he's constantly just like frantically trying to get to Jill.
And it fuels his, if only I could have been
if only I could
have resisted and fought harder to save you, then we could be happy together.
I don't think any other cut of this movie would make sense. Sure, it's dark, but that's why it kind of reminds me of like Shutter Island, not to spoil that if you haven't seen Shutter Island, but it has that element to it, at least to me, where it's like an understanding. An understanding of I can't go on like this, and my only other option is this. So this is where we're going. I had to laugh that second time I watched it because I was like, the ending to Brazil is not that like shocking. That first time I saw it, I was like, oh shit, like bummer. Like, oh dang, this is crazy. But the second time I watched it, I was like, the whole movie, I was like, oh, the ending makes perfect sense. Like this makes everything that happens in the movie makes way more sense now that I know how it culminates and I'm able to track it. It's like Tuttle being like, the paper is just attacking him and he like vanishes and then the SWAT shows back up and it's frantic, it's chaotic, but it makes so much sense when you watch it, especially that second time around. Dude, this was such a wild movie. Wild fucking movie.
Yeah, it really was. I had no idea what to expect, and I can't even say that it surpassed my expectations, but it really did, because it is a really good movie. I really, really, really liked it.
Yeah,
I feel like I'll watch it more and more as well and get more out of it because it's so dense, so many different little things happening, and you could form different theories, I'm sure. I'd be interested to hear other people's theories if you think it just went the way it was presented or whatever.
Yeah, I want to know like what other theories there are about it. I didn't see anything from Terry Gilliam himself kind of like fueling any theories or like blatantly shutting some down or whatever. He just kind of seems to be like, I made that movie and that's what I wanted to make, so that's what we did.
I started trying to read fan theories. I think people have gotten, the people that know about the movie and like it a lot have tried to like make it make sense more and more as well. And some theories were a little bit crazier. I didn't get as deep as I wanted to in the time we had to prepare for this, but one of them was like, maybe Jill doesn't exist at all and she's just like another side of Sam, that she's the more resistant side or the female side, whatever. She's just another piece of his personality that is portrayed in this memory as another person or something like that.
I feel like with that,
which could be, I don't know.
Yeah. I feel like if that's the case with Jill, then that definitely has to be the case with Tuttle. I feel like Tuttle, if anyone's going to be kind of an alter ego or
Yeah.
like I feel Tuttle has to be that one because Tuttle is.
Yeah. I thought that. I didn't think that specific thing, but I got that kind of impression of his relationship with Tuttle, that Sam is very much a person that has been by the book and following the rules. And then when Tuttle shows up, he's pretty quick to accept, oh, this guy's going to help me out. And then it's not long before he's like, no, he's my friend. Like,
Right.
we are friends. He's going to like bail me out of situations. Yeah, he could definitely be an alternate personality or just another piece of his personality
Yeah, depending on how you.
that he's learning to accept more and more or something.
Dude, Brazil is a total rabbit hole. I think I'm gonna make it a goal at some point this year.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of want to do like, I don't even know what order I would have to do it in. Maybe Time Bandits, Brazil, 12 Monkeys. And I know you haven't seen Time Bandits yet.
No.
Very quirky, weird movie. It's another one that's kind of hard to explain, but I think you would really dig it. It's a fantasy film. It's not very sci-fi, I don't remember, but Time Bandits is fantastic. But the aesthetic of it, the set pieces of it, and the set pieces and kind of feel of 12 Monkeys, really, I was like, dude, this feels like a trilogy. Like,
yeah,
weird to me. And sure as shit, I mean, it's not an official trilogy, but sure as shit, Gilliam has said like Time Bandits, 12 Monkeys in Brazil are his like dystopian trilogy or whatever. I forget what name he actually gave it. And I was like, I think I want to watch all three back to back. I just need to figure out what the order to watch them would be just to see like, are they connected? Are they like, is there a even bigger overall message? Because 12 Monkeys is also very much like kind of keep your guard up over authoritarian government and like what you're being told might not always be the actual case. And if you find out the truth, that might not be the narrative that the big guys want to actually go with. And Time Bandits is fantasy. It's hard to explain how that one would tie in because it's about.
Are they bandits who are stealing time, or are they bandits who are traveling through time?
A little bit of both. They steal a map from God to help them travel like through time and kind of steal stuff. Yeah, very, very fun. At one point, one of the sets is made out of like Legos, and that's such a cool set. Yeah, it's like exaggerated Legos. Very cool set piece. I got to figure out but I thought when I finished Brazil that second viewing, I was like, this would be I feel like if I watched those three back to back, I feel like I would be left with such a weird, I don't want to say profound or anything, but just kind of a like, ooh, okay. like a very humbling experience. I feel it would be a very a nice experience. I think I'm going to make that a goal at some point. Is that the case? But Gilliam's eye is so weird. I respect the hell out of it. I can't help but really love it. Yeah.
Very a unique style. And it's clear, I mean, anybody who's seen Monty Python is a very specific style as well. But I enjoy seeing these movies. I'm glad he went on to direct and continue to write other movies that aren't Monty Python related, because they're very interesting.
They are interesting. They're always weird. They always make you kind of be like, at one point thinking to yourself, what the fuck am I watching? Even with
pushes the boundaries of your thought process.
right. So much fun.
I'm glad I finally crossed it off and found out what it was. I don't know that I know exactly what it was, but I liked what I saw. So I will see it again.
I did really enjoy it, even though I spent, half the movie, the first viewing, of just being like, what did Jake get us into? I was a little worried for a little bit there that I was going to like not like it, but I enjoyed it. I very much enjoyed it. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much I liked it. Talking with you about it has also made me be like, oh man, I got a lot more out of that movie than I initially thought. And that makes me happy because I like that.
Yeah, it kind of helps me process it as well because I'm like, I like this. I get some of the things, but then hearing your thoughts, I'm like, oh yeah, no, actually that's probably right. Or I didn't piece together the whole wings mean freedom thing until I was saying the words. I was like, actually, no, obviously, duh, that makes sense.
Such a cool movie. It's definitely worth a watch. I agree that it should be on that list of 1,000 movies you should see. Such a cool movie. Yeah, very unique.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm so glad I understand the context of those screenshots now. I get it. Yay!
Yeah. You would never be able to guess what the context is, so you really have to see it to get it.
At all.
Yeah.
But
yeah, we want to know what you thought if you hate this movie, which I could see some people really disliking it because it's such a strong style, or if you love it, or if you're in the middle and if you have other thoughts about it, or if there's any parts. There's a lot that we didn't talk about. So if you want to talk about it more, hit us up on Instagram or YouTube, leave a comment, or even just DM us. We're not trying to get engagement. We're just trying to talk to you about it because we think it's awesome. So yeah, shoot us a message and we're happy to talk about it more.
Always happy to talk about movies, obviously. Thank you again, everyone. We appreciate the hell out of you. Make sure you subscribe, do all that good stuff, follow us, go get your cool swag, and dude, it's gonna be a good year. We got some cool shit lined up, some fun episodes coming your guys' way.
Our schedule's already filling up. It's gonna be a really good one.
Yeah,
our best ever, I would say.
I'm very excited for what's to come, so happy to have you guys with us. I think that's it.
That sounds good.
Cool.
We'll see you guys next time.
See you guys.